Once, the cosmos remained ignorant of what lurked beneath the surface of Earthlings. There existed an age when celestial bodies had not yet learned to tremble at the mention of humankind, a species carved from the fabric of predatory instinct and mortality. This ignorance wasn't by chance. Earthlings recognized their intrinsic nature and understood their capabilities all too well. They harbored no desire for conflict, no appetite for battle, fully aware of what such pursuits transformed them into. Yet sometimes choice becomes luxury. Sometimes the greater universe fails to perceive your struggle, blind to what simmers just beneath your epidermis. They observe only fragile bipeds, tiny blue planet dwellers who seem quaint and withdrawn. And due to this cosmic ignorance, coupled with Earthling reservation, the stars had not yet learned to fear them. The universe didn't know enough to shudder at the thought. Not yet. A lesson awaited teaching. This wasn't the purpose behind the assembly. Representative Naya was a tall extraterrestrial with ashen skin, a determined demeanor, and the fighting spirit of many warriors combined. Her name was Thalia, and she frequently commanded attention during United Coalition gatherings. Such boundary violations contradict everything our alliance represents, she declared, standing at the head of a curved conference table, leading the diplomatic contingent of the Ardani people, an ancient and influential species. Other extraterrestrials seated along the table represented additional major powers, civilizations controlling significant resources or military might, sometimes both. Most other species were relegated to observing from the expansive chamber galleries, representatives certainly, but unlike the major powers. They cast votes, but their voices went unheard. Only the most influential interstellar nations earned seats at that table. The Zentari and Kelvorians have always shown respect toward this institution. They were lanky, amber-skinned beings of remarkable grace and slenderness. Their every movement resembled artistic expression, each word selected with painterly precision. But we refused further disrespect. That explains our vessels amassing along the sector perimeter. A stocky, hirsute creature vocalized agreement nearby. The Zentari stand with their Kelvorian brethren. Fleets of warships had gathered along the border of another major power, the Raidani, creating a precarious situation. Thalia shook her head with visible frustration. She struggled to maintain order. "Neither of you has suffered disrespect," she said, raising a calming, careful hand. "This matter requires discussion after emotions have subsided. I won't allow this assembly to deteriorate into unfounded accusations." The Kelvorian raised his head. Unfounded accusations. His voice remained steady and unbroken. The assembly requires verification before action becomes possible. This represents another attempt to dismiss our grievances. His silky, dark eyes reflected the ornate chamber illumination. Our nation endures daily indignities, while Raidani mining operations persist in space explicitly under our jurisdiction. We refuse to passively observe while our lawful territory faces piracy. "I would never attempt to silence any major assembly member," she replied, glancing around to emphasize her point to everyone present. "Nor would I ignore wrongdoing against them. I assure you the Ardani envoys worked diligently to compile comprehensive findings." Representative Thalia. He folded his limbs across his torso. "We all respect your contributions to this assembly during recent cycles, but we fear inadequate handling. We suspect favoritism. We shall take action." She remained resolute, composed, and clear. "You have my pledge on that matter. I fear promises made within this assembly grow increasingly meaningless." Those words carried tremendous gravity and consequence. Though merely one sentence, it fundamentally undermined everything the Galactic Coalition represented, an attack on the promises and agreements forged within its sacred halls. Thalia recognized this. Everyone did, to some extent, but tensions ran too high for further discussion. A skilled diplomat recognizes when strategic retreat proves necessary to fight another day. I regret hearing such sentiments. She scanned the seated assembly nations and the observing lesser species. The chamber darkened, casting shadows on her heart. I hope we remedy this mindset at our next gathering, and I guarantee this will become the explicit objective of my people and myself. We appreciate your efforts, Representative Thalia. We hope you can. The assembly concluded on that haunting, hesitant note, hopeful yet shrouded in suspense and trepidation. Something ominous approached. Thalia hurled documents onto her desk, her formerly pristine braided hair now disheveled. Are they attempting to dismantle the assembly? She muttered. An earthling sat across from her, his tone casual, expression bearing a subtle smile. He reclined in her solitary visitor chair, wearing an immaculate ebony suit, carrying himself with relaxed confidence and displaying the collected demeanor of a seasoned statesman. He ignited a smoking cylinder and crossed his legs, speaking with a blend of tasteful sympathy and matter-of-fact rhythm. Probably. Earthlings were newcomers to the coalition, one of the lesser nations rarely voting on any matter. Nobody paid much attention to Earthlings, but Thalia particularly appreciated them. Specifically, she favored Savior, their selected representative, considering him straightforward and level-headed, rarities in interstellar politics. What makes you suggest that destroying the assembly serves their interests? She glanced around her elegant, spacious office with exhausted eyes, her diplomatic tact eroded alongside her energy. Please explain your reasoning. The Kelvorians and Zentari stand together, yes. She collapsed into her seat with an audible sigh. Obviously. The Zentari lead the coalition's military alliance, correct? Correct. Savior inhaled from his smoking cylinder, savoring the vapor with almost philosophical contemplation, watching the small clouds rise and dissipate from the ember. Would you agree they exert considerable influence over the more militant factions? I suppose. He waved dismissively. Then they control sufficient numbers to dominate the assembly. Pardon me. My calculations seem accurate. They command between half and three-quarters of the coalition's firepower within their alliance, sufficient for domination. She laughed, half ironically, half horrified. Surely you jest. That's absurd, Savior. He raised his hands, mimicking the motions he described. Just as celestial bodies crash into one another, propelled by gravitational forces, creating predictable trajectories we can calculate precisely, intelligent species collide with each other, driven not by gravity but by the force of power. She furrowed her brow. The force of power? As predictable as physics, perhaps more so. This exceeds reason. She laughed, albeit nervously. The Ardani, my people, we've never experienced this compulsion to dominate. When did your species last possess a monopoly on force? Again with these terms, have the Ardani ever controlled three-quarters of the galaxy's capacity for destruction? He reached across her desk, pouring amber liquid into an iced vessel. While I claim no expertise in Ardani history, I recall reading about your rather violent past, particularly before achieving spaceflight, something your species calls the Howler conflicts. Hardly sounds pleasant. Her expression darkened as she observed him, her scowl persistent but less harsh, less judgmental. You rank among the galaxy's finest politicians. That much is evident. He took a casual sip. But your diplomatic mindset has clouded your instinct for violence. Your bloody history makes you no different, despite everyone's apparent obsession with concealing it. We all share similar origins. The stars demand sacrifice to be reached. Even my earthling ancestors understood this when slaughtering animals in reverence to the heavens. We've always known. I don't desire violence. He raised a hand. Neither do I, few likely do. Then why would the Kelvorian initiate efforts causing such devastation? He tilted his head, settling deeper into his chair while gazing toward the ceiling. I suspect celestial bodies never desire collision, Thalia. He took a prolonged, measured breath. Yet who resists gravity? She studied her hands, rubbing them together thoughtfully. The force of power. She detested that phrase, abhorred it. She resisted admitting it, but something about it carried weight. Perhaps his insight contained truth. Thalia positioned herself at the table's head. The atmosphere felt taut as a bowstring, but she projected confidence. With care and poise, she adjusted a stack of documents before her, concentrating her energy while preparing her opening statement. She glanced toward the lesser nations and noticed Savior watching her. She considered offering a courteous smile but hesitated, observing an unfamiliar seriousness about him. He stared intently, elbows resting on his knees, hands forming a knot before his mouth. Something seemed amiss. Representative Thalia, her Ardani assistant, leaned forward from behind. "We await only the Kelvorian representative." She smiled, speaking discreetly. The Rydani representative sat beside her, visibly anxious. They represented the nation the Kelvorians accused of resource theft. Currently, a standoff persisted along the sector border. Rydani vessels facing Zintari and Kelvorian ships. A dire position for 3 major nations. "Relax." Thalia placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Everything will be fine." Thalia's report confirmed it. By all accounts, the Kelvorians fabricated their claims. Some unauthorized mining occurred, but where did it not? By no measure did it constitute a full-scale Rydani-supported operation. This situation remained resolvable through mature dialogue within the chamber. Everyone could proceed accordingly. The Rydani representative smiled, her brownish, scaly skin masking vulnerable emotions. Conditions remain chaotic back home. Everyone anticipates imminent war. The Ardani experienced similar concerns. More than ever, pressure mounted on Thalia to diffuse tensions. "I'll manage it." She gripped her documents firmly. "We possess everything necessary." The Kelvorian finally entered the chamber. His arrival imposed silence throughout the entire room, as though his presence lit a fuse. The countdown commenced, and everyone recognized it. "Welcome, Kelvor," she observed his deliberate stride. "We're eager to begin." Something about him seemed different. His typically tall posture appeared tenser than usual. His features tightened, and the longer Thalia studied his eyes, the stronger her unease grew. "Kelvor?" He paused before his seat, hands resting gently on the chair. "I request permission to deliver a statement before we proceed." Thalia blinked, caught unprepared. "Please sit down and proceed." "I prefer standing." She tensed, settling into her own seat while observing the Kelvorian begin. "My people have been deliberating." His voice sounded curt, painfully professional. "Alongside the Zintari, Mirak, and others, we've unanimously concluded that you've been hosting joint political councils without notifying the committee. This directly violates multiple agreements. You must recognize this prohibition." Representative Thalia. He wouldn't even look at her. "May I continue uninterrupted?" Beneath the table, her fingers rubbed against each other anxiously. She nodded. "Proceed." "To continue, an alliance of nations, all enumerated in documents already distributed to all members, concurs with our position. This assembly no longer prioritizes collective interests. Favoritism has overtaken and halted necessary functionalism." She stood abruptly, slamming her hands onto the table and raising her voice. "Kelvor, this is preposterous." "Interruptions, Representative Thalia." "Interruptions." She grew too heated now, refusing to passively witness the Kelvorian spread falsehoods. "I apologize to the remaining assembly members for this disruption, but such language and bold declarations cannot proceed without thorough examination." Kelvor lowered his gaze, resuming from his previous point. "We stand united. Effective immediately, the Kelvorians and all aforementioned nations withdraw from the assembly. Henceforth, matters fall under our own jurisdiction." Representative Thalia. The Rydani representative's complexion drained, her words unsteady and frantic. "We're receiving reports that—" "Oh, merciful stars." Thalia stared at Kelvor incredulously. "Kelvor, what transpires here?" He maintained his imposing stance, as immovable and majestic as ever. "We've initiated a preemptive defensive strike to preserve as many lives as possible. We implement measures ensuring swift and decisive conflict." "No." Thalia felt dizzy. No, this cannot happen. Our sole concern involves the Redani and their avaricious practices. Should any other nation intervene, they shall receive identical treatment. Thelia's hands clenched. This constitutes an unconscionable offense. This represents justice. He surveyed the chamber, toward the galleries and other members. All nations committed to preserving genuine legal equality and representation should swiftly follow our withdrawal. Finally, he looked directly at Thelia, almost sympathetically. We regret this necessary action. Traitor, we wish you prosperity. He turned and departed, taking with him a staggering contingent of representatives, leaving behind a confused, frightened, and hesitant assembly. The Raidani representative verged on collapse, trembling with fear. Thelia raised a hand to her chin, eyes downcast as she spoke. We won't abandon the Raidani. Her voice maintained its confident, powerful quality, though she sensed the hollow resonance in her heart, felt the dull roar echoing in everyone's ears. Justice shall prevail. She looked toward the galleries, finding Xavier. He maintained his earlier position, expression equally serious. Upon meeting her gaze, he lowered his hands and silently mouthed a message. The force of power. There it appeared again. That slightly haunting phrase, its painful truth now more evident than ever. The planets moved in their courses. Collisions became inevitable. She nodded. We shall endure. She addressed everyone, eyes still fixed on Xavier and his message. We shall endure. She tapped her desk nervously, reviewing report after report. Impossible. Not with your current resources. Xavier poured 2 drinks from across her desk, offering one. I wouldn't dare cloud my reasoning right now. You're not clouding them. You're clarifying them. He emptied his glass in one motion. Think soberly during peace. Think boldly during war. She contemplated the drink before eventually accepting and consuming it completely. The Joint War Council convenes in 2 cycles here. Her voice sounded relaxed and light after the drink, focusing on the challenge ahead. Much work awaits us. Xavier appeared more stressed than she'd ever witnessed, his immaculate suit now slightly rumpled, somewhat disheveled and uneven. Xavier, she softened her tone, we'll survive this ordeal. He smirked, looking downward while shaking his head. You don't understand. She tilted her head quizzically. He poured another drink, taking considerable time with his movements. With careful hands, he lit another smoking cylinder, his thoughts seemingly elsewhere. I've never known you lacking words. He nodded with the cylinder between his lips. May I ask something important? Certainly. This represents a crucial question, Thelia. She frowned, sinking into her seat. Go ahead. Words suddenly erupted from him, his gaze fixed downward, hands emphasizing each statement. You're overwhelmingly outmatched across every metric. Little hope exists for success. Certainly you could try, but nobody would place wagers on the outcome. He inhaled from his cylinder, wispy vapor emerging from his lips. But suppose I offered an alternative. Suppose I could implement something altering this conflict's course before it even begins. But it might. No, it would. Exact tremendous cost. Would you accept? Xavier, explain yourself. He jerked his head nervously. I serve an important assembly function, Thelia. All representatives do. An honorable position. Honor? No. He released an anxious chuckle. Not like that. My species entrusted me with a decision. I'm essentially. This proves difficult to explain. Then speak plainly. Earthlings have this historical account about one of us from long ago. His name was Dreyfus, the first to discover atomic fission. Dangerous, naturally. He drained another drink. Well, legend says he became devastated by his discovery and subsequent decision. Devastated because once something escapes containment, recapture becomes impossible, and he assumed responsibility. He questioned whether any initial conflict justified such consequences. She observed him, lightly tapping her desk. All right. Forgive me. He seemed, I apologize for this confusion, but I'll simply state it directly. He leaned forward, elbows resting on knees, staring at her with intense urgency. Invite Earthlings to assume leading roles in the War Council. Allow me to introduce my generals. Let them commence operations. Permit us genuine involvement in this conflict. She shook her head, somewhat perplexed. That represents significant prestige for a lesser nation. I'm uncertain if Thelia. He appeared horrified. Nothing would please me more than your refusal. I could almost beg your denial. But I recognize that would be wrong. I understand victory represents our sole priority now. Correct. Then proceed. She couldn't break eye contact with him. Something else manifested. Something unprecedented. Something frantic and energized. Something almost frightening. Very well. She trusted him. Very well. Earthlings shall occupy leadership positions. I guarantee it. He compressed his lips, remaining silent. His expression transformed into a subtle, gentle smile, not happy but sympathetic, regretful. He simply nodded, poured one final substantial drink, consumed it immediately, and departed. Thelia eventually noticed a small note he'd left on her desk before leaving. She unfolded it, curious and still somewhat disoriented from their exchange. The force of power. She stared at it, hands tightening. Why did that phrase grow increasingly terrifying? Thelia surveyed the room, observing the Ardani leaders, Raidani officials, and various other major nations possessing sufficient vessels to direct the war. They surrounded the table, organizing documents, exchanging observations, examining reports, and anxiously studying the ceiling. Cold atmosphere pervaded. Everyone comprehended the odds. Their uphill struggle remained no secret. Earthlings arrived last, delayed while the council grew restless. A horned Ardani scowled. This exemplifies allowing lesser species into council chambers. They disregard seriousness. The Raidani leader stared vacantly into the distance. We must begin. Before Thelia could respond, Savior burst through the entrance. His attire appeared disheveled, his neckwear loose, his gaze downcast as he entered with smoking cylinder in hand. He bypassed the Earthling seat, instead leaning against the wall behind it. Savior, Thelia smiled nervously. Are others joining us? Dark circles marked his eyes. He regarded her, inhaling from his perpetual cylinder, then simply gestured toward the doorway. Instantly, a contingent of metal-clad, stoic-featured, intimidating Earthlings entered. Assistants followed carrying reports and documents. Subordinates constantly communicated through devices or relayed information. Computer signals and footwear sounds filled the space, completely different demeanor than expected. An elderly, hairless, large-framed Earthling stood before the designated seat. His face displayed severe wrinkles and concentration as he spoke with mechanical lung power. Is everyone present? The assembly stared at him. Then let's commence. He sat heavily. Assistants dispersed, distributing different documents and instructions. Others established sector maps, extensive planning tables, and various instruments. I'm General Maddox. I'm the wretch who'll annihilate these adversaries. Everyone appeared stunned. Thelia remained speechless, glancing toward Savior for assistance, but he refused to look upward, seemingly diminished in his shadowed corner as though attempting to vanish. What occurs here? The Ardani leader growled. You won't lead this council. This represents collaborative effort. Your designation. I am Grand Admiral Valkus, Supreme Ardani War Commander. Excellent. I remain indifferent. Collective gasps followed. Maddox's mouth contorted into a tense frown, his eyebrows lowered and aimed like weapon barrels. I disregard everyone's opinions. Everyone shall remain silent and attentive. Within moments, I'll demonstrate why you not merely need us, but desperately require us. And furthermore, you possess no alternatives, not anymore. Valkus blinked dumbly, uncertain how to respond. Maddox opened an extensive folder before him. Let's simplify matters further. Should you lose this conflict, I suspect the Kelvorians will, at minimum, enslave half your populations." Thalia gasped. "What?" "You're correct." He laughed harshly. "Probably everyone. Assuming they spare anyone. General Maddox." Thalia's heart raced. "I question whether you comprehend this situation." "No, nobody does. Nobody has penetrated your thick skulls regarding current circumstances. This isn't about political advantage within your assembly, but survival itself. Absolute stakes. Eternal consequences. Understand what that signifies." Silence prevailed. "It means everything becomes permissible, and I doubt your preparedness." He straightened, indicating an assistant who activated a large display showing strategies and plans. "Therefore you have me, and rest assured, nothing remains undone." Finally, Thalia caught Xavier's gaze. Brief, dark, terrifying. She observed him raising his head and felt chilled. Along his cheek edge, small and nearly invisible, one faint teardrop appeared. Tiny acknowledgement, terrible apology. What had they unleashed? The Kelvorians and their alliance had dominated various war sectors. Their presence extended everywhere. Their campaign comprehensive and precise. With superior firepower advantage, they advanced with minimal resistance or concern. Victory appeared mathematically certain. Then initial cracks emerged. Earthlings first revealed themselves at an isolated, strange Kelvorian outpost somewhere within conquered Redani territories. An alliance vessel approached for refueling. The floating station served occupation forces reliably, exchanging rumors and plans as casually as refreshments. Yet upon approach, sliding into familiar docking, oppressive coldness enveloped them. Nobody responded to docking signals. No soldier emerged with directions. Instead, an indifferent metal hulk confronted them. Eventually, Kelvorians disembarked and entered the station. Their footwear echoed through silent, mysterious corridors like unanswered questions. They entered the familiar canteen area and discovered horrors. Their crew, their companions, their battle siblings, all deceased and mutilated. They witnessed monstrous butchery by killers who restrained victims individually, extracted information, then proceeded methodically to the next. War's bloody business appeared unexpectedly. Ancient primate methodologies for gaining advantage. Earthlings. Earthlings became warfare's terrible specters. Every transport became targetable. Innocents remained unprotected. Simple mining colonies constituted legitimate objectives. With dreadful realization, Kelvorians and allies recognized potential overextension, that unrestricted warfare tactics proved subversive and impossible to counter. They consolidated armies to reconcentrate forces and resolve internal challenges. Yet as armadas converged, they discovered another Earthling warfare characteristic: reckless courage. Like lightning across clear skies, Earthlings erupted onto battlefields with shocking suddenness. No Kelvorian or Zintari could rationalize such numerical disadvantage gambling, yet Earthlings persisted across every front. Not every engagement favored Earthlings, but that ceased mattering. Perceptions shattered. Rules disintegrated. Fear reigned under Earthling command voices. Now Kelvorians and allies maintained nothing securely. Every minor resource risked seizure. Every territorial fragment represented vulnerability requiring defense, yet every preservation attempt presented worse risk of greater losses. Dread controlled commanders. Apprehension governed leaders. Earthlings exploited such warfare sins with rapid efficiency. The conflict transformed into primal struggle. Ancestral tenacity's ancient echo. And only Earthlings remembered that sound. Thalia sat alone in her office while hostilities subsided. Kelvorians approached peace negotiations, others surely following, yet certainty eluded her otherwise. Truthfully, darkness and anxiety shadowed her heart's edges. These should have represented glorious cycles, instead marred by haunting thoughts. She questioned whether Earthlings would accept peace terms. Maddox insisted leveraging every advantage until achieving total victory. "Half peace isn't peace," became his refrain. Nobody dared ask what constituted complete peace anymore. Xavier vanished. Thalia hadn't seen him since that initial meeting, yet her thoughts constantly returned to him. She wished for his presence. He seemed the only Earthling capable of translating their thoughts, their furious passions and sentiments. She gazed toward stars from her office. An Earthling fleet prepared departure for another mission. She stopped questioning their objectives. Every answer sickened her. Her hand clutched that previous note, examining its desperate black ink warning from the past. The words made sense now, alongside Xavier's tears, peculiar questions, and narratives. Everything aligned. He served as gatekeeper, entrusted with determining Earthling involvement with others, a Dreyfus for mankind itself. Now they roamed unleashed, atoms split and dispersed. She nodded, gazing back toward the fleet, reciting those words. The force of power. Indeed, reality manifested before her eyes. Earthlings represented apex predators. Demons finally escaping confinement. Xavier attempted prevention, but choosing between withdrawal and defeat proved unacceptable for Earthlings, their essential nature, generating self-loathing. What followed? Where would planets fall? What collision awaited after subduing Kelvorians and Centauri? Who would fill that void? Vacuums demand universal substance, Xavier once explained, his words now seeming prophetic. She recognized only one certainty, terrifying her. Regardless of subsequent events, the galaxy's fundamental force would dictate outcomes: power. And presently, power answered to one designation: Earthlings.